Hey, it's Angus. The other day I posted a video of me playing through my 50-watt Plexi doing some AC/DC licks, and I thought it might be nice to make a video where I just tell you a little bit about this amp, how I came to own it. I think that the term Plexi has become ubiquitous amongst tone chasers in saying, sounds just like a Plexi, or I'm using the Plexi model on my Axe effects, and I'm wondering how many folks have actually played through one or have dealt with owning one, or been in the room with one when somebody's making that insanely awesome sound through it. So I thought I'd just kind of tell you what it's like. This is a Marshall 1987X. It is a reissue of the 50-watt small box Plexi, or Mark II, original model number 1987. This was made in England in 91 or 92, and I purchased it in 1998. I'd been playing guitar for Guitaro up until that time, and I had this touring rig. It was a Marshall JMP1 MIDI preamp with a separate power amp, and it was not a good choice for being a New York-based guitar player in this kind of post-grunge meets Matchbox 20 singer-songwriter scene that was then happening. I was in a band, kind of a songwriter-based band called Picasso Jones, and the singer played guitar, and he had a Fender Hot Rod, and he would routinely just blow me out of the water. So up next to a real tube amp, that Marshall thing not only looked really nerdy and overblown, but it also sounded like the pathetic whine of a manacled gnat up next to a real amp. So I went down to 30th Street Guitars on 30th Street in New York. It's not there anymore. Don't look for it. It's on 27th Street now. This is a great store. It was a great hang. It still is a great hang. And I went down there, and they would have used gear, a lot of great used gear in and out of there all the time. And they had this amp. So I went and tried it in their blast room, and it gave me this experience where just when you chuck the strings, the concussion from that is something you feel through your whole body. And I had only had that experience one time before, is when I tried a Blues Breaker combo at Manny's, and it had the same kind of circuit design of the 4 inputs, and you could mix the high treble volume and the low end volume by jumping the 2 inputs together. And it had that similar experience at Manny's, and then I had it there at 30th Street. I was in love with it, had to have it, and so I went ahead and got my first Marshall amp, or real Marshall amp. From that point forward, there was no question about who was the loudest guy in the band. So let's talk about life with the Plexi. The Plexi is a harsh mistress. It gives and it takes. It gives you immediate respect from anyone whose opinion is worth hearing. It may take a good chunk of your hearing from you. It gives you dominance over all comers, but it takes from you any hiding place. If you make a mistake, everyone is going to know it. It's like being naked. So your playing has to meet the level. It will make you a better guitar player. Was it practical on all gigs? Absolutely not. The volume jumps from inaudible to bone crushing somewhere between 0 and 1. I think I can give you a demo of that. And from there, it doesn't really get louder, it just gets gainier. Now, was it practical in terms of maintenance? Absolutely not. I blew the transformer twice and eventually replaced it with a Mercury Magnetics transformer and choke, which is an aftermarket transformer, and I actually like what that did to it, kind of improved it in my opinion. It's been through the shop of every decent repair guy in New York, including Matt Wells and finally Blackie Pagano. And I think Blackie Pagano is the last guy that had his hands on it, and he's probably the only guy that's ever going to touch it from this point forward. Blackie did add an effects loop to it. He added the Metropolis Metro loop to it, and that works great. You can hear how transparent it is. Check it out. That's out. Back in. you get a new version of the 1987X, it comes with an effects loop. I assume it works great. The Metropulos Metro loop is a great aftermarket option if you've got a vintage style amp and you want to add an effects loop to it. I will say that in my experience, it is best to run a buffer in the effects loop, no matter what cable length you're running. Run some kind of buffer in there, and you can look up what that is if you're not aware. So over time, I've learned a lot about how to get tones from it. There's some cute tricks you can do if you really want to get a low volume sound out of it. Here's a quick tip. You plug into the low input on the bass channel. Now I know you're thinking, well, I'm not using the high treble channel, so I should zero that out. And let's find out what happens. So here's the low channel, and you'll hear it's almost unusably bassy. But the volume is much more controllable, and we've got less gain. So how to get that treble back? Well, it turns out, I don't know if it's due to channel bleed or due to some capacitance issue across the two channels, but if you bring up the high treble volume while you're plugged into the bass input, you actually get some of that high end back. And then you have basically a pretty clean amp at a relatively controllable volume that you can add pedals to. So, so that's a great tip. You're not having to use a load box or any of that stuff. To wrap up, two things. First, I know there are a lot of amazing builders out there who are making great amps that are variations on this circuit or exact replicas of this circuit, but have some modern enhancements that allow you to work at various volumes and add effects, etc., etc. And I think that that's awesome, and I applaud those guys for their work. At the same time, I've always enjoyed being a guy that plays a Plexi. And that attitude may be completely irrelevant now, but it did help me define myself as a player at that point in my life, and so I've always stuck by it, and it's important. Second thing, I bought this used at a local store that serves as a hub for musicians, and I think that that's important. I think buying used gear is a great way to give a piece of equipment a second life in the hands of another musician. And I don't buy things that have gone into that collector price point. I've always just been a kind of working musician. The gear needs to pay for itself in some way. So I liked buying used gear as a way of saving money on decent gear. And then I stick with it. So with all the repairs and everything, I guess I consider myself more of a loyalist than a collector. So I just think that support your local business, support the place that supports your local musicians, and be a part of that community, and go in there and find some used gear and give it some love. I'll leave you with a couple more AC/DC licks or AC/DC style licks, and I'm plugging straight in as I was at the top. I've got the loop defeated, so it's not going through the loop at all. It's on full power. It's just going through a Marshall 412 with a Celestion Heritage G12M, close mic'd with an SM57 and a Biodynamic M160. So thanks for watching. If you liked anything about this video at all, please check out the other videos on my channel and hit subscribe, and I'll see you here.